back to my channel. This is Nicholas Woodkey here, about to resume reading in Parabolic Magnetic Key. And I'll try to make segment 2 here even better than the first segment. Okay, I'll start getting articles together and fill the canteens with water from one of the adjacent creeks. Although it's drinkable, I personally wouldn't designate it the most crystal clear of water sources, it being up to the drinker's imagination as to what it could best be categorized. I think I'd label it a 4 on the water clarity scale of 1 to 10. It resembles the water that used to sit in the ditch in front of my childhood home, declared Dave. Mick chuckled. He remembered. Mick and Dave gathered their significant amount of traveling gear, which wasn't particularly easy because they were still sore from the all-important arm wrestling tournament the day previous. Their backpacks were heavy, probably too heavy for most to even lift off the ground, but years of practice with such loads were enabling. They were out of the door in hopes of experiencing another memorable 24 hours. 24 at the least. Having taken a few hundred paces in the direction they wanted to go, they noticed an older gentleman walking towards them, who was obviously extremely physically fit for his age. The man was exhaustingly pulling a heavy tarpaulin-covered wagon. Before the stranger was within earshot, Mick said to Dave, "I would have never expected to see someone else in these parts." "Apparently, this area isn't as secluded as it seems," Dave replied. "Mystical." Having closed the gap and let go of the wagon, the stranger, adorned by a winning smile, greeted Mick and Dave. "You fellows look like you need to rest. Your bodies plainly show it. Are you headed anywhere in particular?" At first glance, Mick could tell the stranger, Brom, was overflowing with stories, but he could also tell the man didn't have the time to share many of them. Mick replied, "I'm not sure yet to where exactly our path will lead us. We just go where the wind takes us sometimes. And as for the rest of which you speak, our bodies are uncharacteristically sore. I'm sure they'll recover shortly. Arm wrestling tournaments tend to sap strength from the entire body, not just the arms. Yesterday we'd entered the tournament in Shalator." In reality, Mick and Dave did know where they were generally headed. They just didn't know exactly what they were going to do when they got there. Their minds were on the war and everything about it. Indeed, they can do that. I too participated in a few grueling tournaments back in my day, Brom shared. On a different note, hopefully you don't end up in Zant. I think a battle is going to commence there. That's quite possible. Both. Ah, war. What can you do? The three exchanged names, and without warning, Brom switched gears from pleasantries to salesmanship. He took the tarp off the cart he was pulling and proclaimed, "What I have under this tarp is my life's work, but I have to sell it all to continue the search for the most important thing in my life, my children. Specifically, my search is for my son. He went missing a while ago, and my resources are getting too low for me to continue my search much longer." Dave looked upon Brown with a heartfelt glance and replied, "We will unquestionably do as much as we can to help you out. In my cart are 3 complete sets of armor that need to be sold, each one taking me 10 years to complete. 30 painstaking years of my life are in this heavier-than-it-looks cart. All 3 sets are constructed from the finest metals." Mick and Dave looked onto the cart and started to examine the suits in their entirety. They surveyed all the intricate details and studied the metals from which each piece was made. They noticed how all 3 suits glistened in the sun. They picked up a breastplate and realized that it was the lightest but strongest breastplate they had ever seen. The same was also true for the greaves, gauntlets, boots, helmet, and the rest. The people across the continent of Tarask sometimes called each item of a suit of armor a different thing, depending on where they lived, but in Garab and Sarab it was all pretty standard. "These are indeed the absolute finest sets of armor in all Garab and Sarab, and we would certainly love to be clad in these, but I'm afraid, however, I don't think we could ever afford it," said Mick, while mentally picturing himself and Dave going into battle with such fine craftsmanship protecting them. "I understand. I know there aren't too many people that would be able to afford one of my armor sets." "Actually," noted Mick, "we do know of one person that may be able to help you out. An old man who lives back near our hometown of Shalator. He may have sufficient funds to purchase one of the suits. He is a collector of all sorts of arms and armor." Brom sadly responded, I just came back from that way and would hate to do that much backtracking. I'm actually trying to get to Sarawak because I've heard there are certain people interested in this sort of thing there. Dave jumped into the conversation, almost an interruption. Please, don't head to that part of the country. We've heard many murders are transpiring in that section due to the war. I'm afraid you'd risk suffering the same fate. Your advice is certainly well respected by me, and I know your wisdom is just. But I have to head in that direction. I feel my son's life depends on it. Godspeed to you then, my friend, and may your journey have a happy ending. In the future, if we ever can help you, we will, Mick said with utmost certainty. I will certainly count you among my friends, and appreciate your offer of helping me more than you know. Hopefully my journey is short, and we'll all come out alive. Until we meet again, goodbye. Very well, friend, said Dave and Mick simultaneously. Just before Brom started to turn and walk away, pulling the cart containing arguably the 3 best sets of armor in the entire continent. When Brom was out of earshot, Mick said to Dave, "Those sets of armor are too good to be worn by anyone. They should be displayed on pedestals for all to look upon so nobody scratches and damages them while wearing them into battle." I don't think that will ever happen. I just hope the armor doesn't end up in the wrong hands. I doubt that Brom is really worrying about that, and who can blame him? He needs to do what needs to be done for the good of his family. That's true. Hopefully next time we see him, he isn't in such dire straits. Yes, hopefully. Mick and Dave started to walk again, but kept Brom on their minds for quite some time. After a period of relaxed walking, Dave looked to Mick and said, "Oh dang, I forgot that roll of seemingly combustible paper sitting on the table back at that house. I think it would have been a nice thing to use for starting up our next fire." "Yeah, that would have been a good thing to have. It's too bad there aren't very many paper birches around," Mick returned. Paper birch bark was used as tinder frequently by many. Also, trees were capitalized in Grab and Surab due to how important they were. Realizing that paper birches in Grab and Surab were as abundant as stars, and that Mick was being sarcastic, Dave chuckled. Classic. Mick blurted, "Sorry for the randomness. I guess it isn't too random since he's only a handful of miles ahead of us, but I wonder if the Black Bear likes his moniker. I know I would if it was my nickname, not that I don't already have a good one. Although it would suit me since I'm as strong as a black bear." Mick chuckled. "Yeah, buddy. Just keep telling yourself that." Alrighty, we'll stop there for now.